Hey, Islanders, and welcome to episode 75 of the Camano Voice. Today I speak with the Executive Director of the Stanwood Camano Food Bank. Please welcome Kathy Moe. Hi, I'm Brandon Erickson, and you're listening to the Camano Voice podcast, where I interview folks around Camano Island and beyond. If you want to stay up to date on events, businesses, and even hear a little history of this area, subscribe to this podcast and share with your friends. Thanks for listening. Hey, Islanders, and welcome to another episode of the Camano Voice, where we release a new episode every Tuesday. I just want to remind everyone again, if anyone is enjoying the podcast or if you guys are liking the interviews and stuff, please feel free to share that with your friends, with other Islanders, because it really helps us grow the podcast. Maybe send it to your friend and say what your favorite podcast is or favorite episode is or something like that. And also, if you guys have any comments or questions or just want to say hey, you can email me at voice@camanocommons.com. voice@camanocommons.com. So anyways, I love hearing from everybody and to see how they're liking the podcast. And if they have guest suggestions, I love getting guest suggestions. So I love to hear from you guys. So be sure to send me an email. So today's episode, I speak with Kathy Moe, and she actually took over as the executive director of the Stanwood Camano Food Bank after Lynne Ayers. So if you guys remember back to episode 43 and 44, which you can go back and listen to those episodes as well. But I interviewed Lynne Ayers, who was the current the executive director for the Stanwood Camano Food Bank during that time period. So Kathy actually took over during this whole COVID pandemic. So talk about stepping into like a crazy storm of everything. So she had been working with the food bank and then applied for the director, and we'll get into that whole story of that. But just Kathy has taken over the food bank in a crazy time, and things are going well, all things considered. And so we hear a little bit about her background, how things have shifted and changed during COVID. One of the things you may or may not know is during the whole pandemic and everything, Lynne, when she was still director, was not able to actually come into the food bank. And so the executive director of the food bank wasn't allowed to come in because she was over a certain age, which they weren't allowing people over a certain age into the food bank. So during that time, Kathy was the feet on the ground, kind of stand-in director during that time period. So she talks about that as well and kind of what it was like during that time. And anyways, so without further ado, here's my conversation with Kathy Moe. Hey, Islanders, and welcome to another episode of the Camano Voice. Today I'm here with the director of the Stanwood Camano Food Bank. Welcome to the podcast, Kathy Moe.
Thank you. It's a pleasure to be here, Brandon.
Yeah. So before we get started, tell us a little bit about Kathy.
Well, I've been living on Camano for the last 3 years.
Okay.
And I moved here from Kirkland. And I have 4 children, 6 grandchildren, and my husband. And we love the Camano Stanwood area. We've really enjoyed living here. And it's been a pleasure to work for the food bank, and I'm super excited about this new position I'm in.
Nice. So you survived raising 4 children, so it's possible.
It is possible, actually. That was a terrific time in my life. They're all grown and they have children of their own. So
nice. Yeah, we have, my wife and I have 4 kids. So yeah,
it's an exciting experience.
Yes. All right. So where did you grow up?
Oh, I grew up in Glendale, Arizona, actually, in the Phoenix area. And I went to high school there and worked my way through my adult years. I moved up here in 1992.
Okay.
And I have just fallen in love with the Northwest, I have to tell you.
Yeah.
It's very different than the desert.
Right.
But I love it. It took me about 3 years to get used to the weather.
Yep.
But I'm used to it now.
Yeah. Well, and you beat us by about 3 years. We moved up from Tucson, Arizona in 1995.
Very nice. I love Tucson.
Yeah. So
High desert.
it's really funny because it's funny when you're down in Tucson or if you're up in Washington. There's a lot of people. It's like there's a magical highway that goes between the two.
That is very true. We've met so many people from Arizona up here. And
Yeah.
and then when my family, my brothers still live in the Glendale area, and they say they run into people from Washington all the time.
Yeah. No, it's so weird. Like Kara, who used to own Movement Arts Yoga Studio, she moved to Arizona.
Oh.
And so and there's a lot of customers we have, and it's just really funny how there's a weird, like they skip Oregon and California, go straight to Arizona.
It is funny, isn't it?
So, okay, so then what was it? So you grew up there, and then did you go to college down there?
No, I actually went to UW and I studied human resources
Okay.
when I was as an adult, and then I went to work for I worked a lot of different small jobs when my kids were growing up, and then I landed a job with Wesley Homes, continuing care retirement community in Des Moines, Washington.
Okay.
So they started their own home health agency, and I had been in home health as a staffing coordinator, but I ended up being the executive director there and leading that organization.
Okay.
And it was very, very fun. The 2008 financial crisis happened, and they eliminated my position, made it a nursing position.
Okay.
So I moved on, but was hired on with Quorum, which is an IV pharmacy.
Okay.
So specialty pharmacy. They have a clean room, kind of compounding room. And I worked there for, 8 years
Okay. How did you?
as the director.
So wait, real quick, going back to Wesley Homes, was that like a care facility?
It's a continuing care retirement community. So it has independent living, it has assisted living, and it has nursing home care.
Okay.
And they have several different organizations down in the South End. So
Okay.
communities.
Got it.
And then they developed home health to keep the people that were in independent living independent.
Got it. Okay. Nice. Are they funded the same way like Josephine and those type
Yes.
of cares? Okay. So were you guys was it still that big, I guess, financial struggle that you guys were seeing during that time period? Because I know Josephine, I think it was late last year or really early this year before COVID and everything, they were talking about at one of the chamber meetings of just the things
Yeah.
not being passed and.
It's a hard business
Mm-hmm.
to deal with right now because you're relying on government funds.
Right. Right. Okay. So then, how did you get connected with Quorum CVS then? Because that kind of seems like different.
Through a recruiter.
Okay.
And it just so happened that many years ago, when I was still in Arizona, that I worked for a company called Caremark Home Care.
Okay.
And I was just an office person at the time. And they saw that on my resume that I had worked for Caremark. Well, it was the same company, just a
okay.
different name.
Yeah.
So I had some experience, and they really took a chance on hiring me.
Okay.
And I was there for, like I said, 8 years, I think it was.
Nice. And what was your job when you
I
were
was
there?
the director.
Okay. Very cool.
So I had pharmacists that worked for me, and office staff, pharmacy technicians, and I was basically in charge of that compounding pharmacy to make sure it passed all of the regulations.
Okay. Nice. And then where'd you go from there?
Well, I got hired on with Option Care, which at the time was a Walgreens company. They actually recruited me away from Quorum.
Okay.
And I was there for a couple of years. And we moved out here, and I was driving to South Everett every day
Okay.
and caught in that traffic.
Yep.
And that leads me to how I became connected with the food bank. I was my next door neighbor was having a barbecue, and I went to it, and Lynne Ayers was there.
Okay.
And I was super excited that she was the executive director for the food bank. And we got to talking, and I just thought that was the coolest thing, and I wanted to volunteer. Well, I never got around to volunteering because they ended up having a position available as the operations manager.
Okay.
And so that February, I was hired as the operations manager for the food bank.
Okay. Very cool. Because it looks like, I mean, you said you went to school for human resources, and I mean, I guess the being a director and stuff like that overlaps with it because you're overseeing all of those aspects and stuff.
I have an operational mind.
Okay.
So I can put things together like they're supposed, the flow of a business.
Yeah.
So it's just second nature for me to be able to do the operations pieces.
Yeah. Yeah, and that makes a big difference because, I mean, as working in a business and then owning one, like, there's so many different aspects that little tasks can waste so much time if you don't, improve them and make the flow better.
Yep.
So, very cool. So then, so you got connected. You started out at the food bank, and that was February of
2019.
19? Okay, cool. So then as you were starting to get started, then how did that all piece together? And
Well, it was an eye-opening experience for me, I have to tell you, Brandon.
Mm-hmm.
I had never worked in a place where I wasn't responsible for a healthy bottom line, money coming in the door,
Yeah.
We're giving away everything.
Yeah.
And I mean, we still worry about the funds coming in, but it was just such a different philosophy for me, especially the inventory management piece. I was always really careful about how much I had on the shelf. Well, at a food bank, you want to have a lot on the shelf because you're giving away a lot of food.
Yeah.
And so that was a hard concept for me to pull together in the beginning, but I was able to get it.
Yeah.
It's getting food out to people,
Right.
and it's free food. So I really, in that role, was able to connect with a lot of the partners in the area, the grocery stores, and so we get a lot of donated food from the local grocery stores, IGA, Hagen, Stanwood, QFC. We even go to Arlington, to that Safeway. We go all the way to Mill Creek.
Okay.
And get donations from the grocery stores there.
Nice.
And it's wonderful because it keeps the perishable items moving.
Right. And how does that work then within internally? Because obviously there's a food bank in Mill Creek and stuff like that. Like, how do they kind of split that up and allow like certain food banks from other areas to get stuff?
Well, you have to have a truck that will go refrigerated. It has to be a refrigerated truck going if you go more than 35 miles.
Okay.
So we have actually 2 refrigerated trucks that the Boeing employees donated the money for.
Okay.
So that's been great.
Yeah.
And Food Lifeline sets up those grocery rescue programs with the grocery stores, and the local food bank wasn't able to pick up every day.
Okay.
In Mill Creek.
Yep.
So we got the other days.
Nice.
And so it's worked out really, really well. And then we get a lot of food from Food Lifeline.
Okay. And what's Food Lifeline?
It is the bigger organization. It is really called a food bank, where many food banks are actually food pantries.
Okay.
So it's a large organization down in Burien.
Okay.
A huge building, lots of food, lots of trucks, and they bring in all kinds of government food and food rescue, and then they disperse it out to all the food banks.
Okay.
And Northwest Harvest has the same concept, except they're in the north area. They're Skagit and Whatcom County.
Okay. Okay, so then when you guys get food, like you go and get food from like the grocery stores that you mentioned and some of the local things, but then does Food Lifeline also deliver food to you guys as well?
They deliver food to our partner agency at VOA in
Okay.
Everett, and then we go down and pick it up.
Mm.
And then we can also purchase food through Food Lifeline at a discount.
Okay.
So that really helps if we need large quantities of pallets of food.
Right.
We can purchase a pallet of food and drive the price down.
Right. Yeah, and that was something I know when COVID and all started. I know we'll get there, but when I was talking with Lynn, she was saying like beans, rice, their staples were impossible to find anywhere.
Yeah, they were. Even in the grocery store, there were no beans on the shelf.
Yeah.
It was the craziest thing.
Yeah. So when you'd been working with the food bank for a while, then were you ever thinking like of moving up into a director position, or were you just working as operations manager and you were planning on working there for like that?
I actually, when I took the job as operations manager, I had always thought if Lynn retired, I would be interested in that position.
Yeah.
And I didn't know when that would be.
Right.
Had no idea. And then all of a sudden, boom, it happened. And I actually went through the same process everybody else went through, even though I worked there.
Yeah.
The candidate list was about 100 folks that applied for
Wow.
that position. And they narrowed it down, the board narrowed it down to 10. And then we had multiple interviews. We did a Zoom interview, which was actually easy because we're used to being on Zoom.
Yes.
And we didn't wear our masks. And so you could see our whole
Expressions.
face and expressions. And, you forget how much your face makes an expression.
Right.
And the mask covers up most of it. Then we had an in-person interview. That was difficult because we all were masked up. We were 6 feet apart in a big room at Camano Center.
Yeah.
And I just recognized that this is difficult.
Yeah.
And so I said that right away. This is uncomfortable.
Yeah.
And everybody kind of relaxed.
Yeah.
I know some of the other folks, it was difficult for them because they hadn't been on an interview like that before.
Right. Yeah.
It's hard to interview during COVID.
Yeah. Well, apparently it's hard to find people to work during COVID as well, because you have such a span of reasons why people will or won't work. Some people are, during the beginning time, some people were making more on unemployment than working.
That's very true.
So they were doing that instead. There were some people that were really scared of going out of their house. So they were like, even if it's an essential job, I don't want to work because I don't want to be exposed. So there was that group of people. And then there was people that just, weren't qualified for different positions and stuff. So like your pool got really small during that time period.
It did. And then if you had children and you wanted to go to work, it was hard to find daycare.
Right. Because there wasn't any.
There wasn't any.
Yeah.
So, you're trying to hustle the kids from family to family or wherever to try to work.
Right.
So it is a quandary.
Yeah. So then when you started the process, when did the process start for when they started looking for an executive director? When did you guys know that Lynn was planning on retiring?
Oh gosh, when was that? It must have been in June.
Okay.
And then it's a bit of a blur to me because it's just been a whirlwind since she left. So then July was it may have been May.
Okay.
And June were the interviews.
Yep.
And then July they were making decisions. And I started August 1st.
Okay.
And then Lynn left for California on the 14th.
Wow. Yeah, I just remember because I interviewed her, a year ago now, and we were going over the food bank and kind of her whole career. Because again, she actually came from corporate and worked, and so she kind of had to do a lot of the same rethinking of how things work and operate and run. And then we met with them, her and Jim, because we were going to be starting wine at the marketplace. And so we were like, you guys used to do is actually in this building. So, tell us what you did and everything. So we got to talk with them. And that was in, I think, February or March. We were meeting with them. And yeah. And again, we were like, at that point, they had no intention of leaving. They were talking about like they may sell their house because they have someone looking at, but like still intending on staying here. And then I feel like I turned around and I was like, they're gone. I'm like, they're gone where?
It was a whirlwind for her too.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. No, it sounded like it was very like, I
Quick.
mean, they from talking with them, they've always loved California. They've
Oh, yeah.
always wanted to go back.
Yep.
They just didn't know how quickly that would turn around.
Happened fast.
Yes. Well, and then when I was talking with her too, because she would actually still come and pick up some stuff from us to bring to the food bank, and she was saying how she wasn't allowed to go in or
Right.
work or do anything, and so that kind of later on she was saying that was kind of a natural transition point because.
Yeah.
And during that time, what was your side of it that you were doing? Because I'm assuming you were kind of running everything inside.
That's exactly right.
Yeah.
I was communicating with her over the phone or via email just about every day.
Mm-hmm.
And it was hard because we had to rethink everything that we did. We had rolled out the grocery model so people could actually shop in the food bank.
Yeah.
Well, that wasn't going to work because we couldn't have people in the food bank.
Right.
So we had to rethink, how are we going to do this? Well, I had many nights where I was up late trying to figure out how we were going to do this. And we finally figured that curbside pickup would be the easiest way.
Mm-hmm.
And we've modified it several times to help the clients not get frustrated.
Right.
In the beginning, we were handing out numbers like 1 to 250. Now we hand out groups, group 1 to group 25.
Okay.
So that nobody's arguing about who's in front of who. It's all group 1, group 2,
Yeah.
just like at the airlines.
Mm-hmm.
So we've modified it several times, and we put up tents this year.
Okay.
We put up 2 large tents from Court Party Rentals,
Okay.
and they're tied down with 100 pounds of block.
Yep.
And that has helped enlarge our footprint a little bit so we can keep people dry.
Right.
And our volunteers can be outside part of the time.
Yeah.
We're only allowed 16 volunteers in the food bank
Okay.
and 29 people in the thrift store at a time. So
Okay.
we have somebody at the thrift store actually counting
Right.
people coming in, taking their temps, having them sanitize their hands, just to make sure everything is safe.
Yeah. Well, and this is, that was the other thing we had just I was talking with Lynn about on the podcast was that they had just finished rolling out the whole grocery model and it was all working so well. And that was, this goes back to your background of just operations and stuff like that. Cause that is, that completely changing what you had finally gotten something in place and then had to completely undo it all.
Undo it all in a week.
Yeah.
And so we have purchased all new grocery store shelving, and it's in storage right now.
Okay.
And then we're hoping that by May, I was just talking to the board president a few minutes ago, and we're hoping by May we'll get that grocery store model up and running again.
Okay.
Now that there's a possibility of a vaccine.
Yep. Okay. So then what was it like when everything started hitting in COVID and you guys were working in there? What was it like on the inside for you guys?
Well, we were worried. We
Mhm.
were all worried because a couple of the staff members have illnesses, and we don't want them to get sick.
Mhm.
So, they were kind of sequestered in their offices. And we wanted to treat the clients with dignity and respect, and it didn't feel very respectful to have them line up out in the street.
Mhm.
But they've gotten used to it, but I know in the beginning it was fast moving, Brandon, and you just didn't know from day to day how you were going to have to change things,
Right.
and have to move and be flexible,
Yeah.
and have enough food.
Right.
That was another thing. I was buying up food like anything I could get, because I wasn't sure if we couldn't get macaroni and cheese. We couldn't
Right.
get peanut butter.
Yeah.
We could get little bits of peanut butter, but when you're feeding 250 people in a week, you need 250 jars.
Right.
You
Yep.
need lots of peanut butter. You need lots of macaroni and cheese. You need milk. You need all these things that needed to be purchased. And we were fortunate. We had an outpouring from the community of help financially, so we were
Okay.
able to purchase things. It was finding them that was the
Right.
difficult piece.
Yeah. Yeah. And it was, I mean, what was the spike in numbers and stuff like that from before to after?
In the beginning, the spike went up immediately. People were immediately coming to the food bank because the stimulus hadn't popped in yet,
Right.
and the unemployment hadn't started.
Mm-hmm.
So people were worried, and the shelves at the grocery store were bare, if
Right.
you remember.
Yeah.
Yeah, and so we just kept plugging along. We have a program called A Simple Gesture,
Mm-hmm.
and it's a green bag program, and there's 600 people in the area that have their green bags, and they fill them up, and then we go around and pick them up
Mm-hmm.
with donations. And we had to cancel that for April because we didn't know if we could trust that there wasn't COVID germs on the food that they were donating.
Right.
And so we had to be super, super careful.
Right.
And then in June, we went ahead and did June, and it all worked out great.
Okay.
But we get in a lot of donations through that program.
Yeah.
And that really carried us through, like 7,000 pounds of food in a day we'll bring in from the island and from Stanwood. Of course, we have to sort through it all, make sure it's all good,
Mm-hmm.
and then get it out on our shelves.
Yeah.
And what we do is we pack a box for the week.
Okay.
So we're packing hundreds of boxes of these certain menu items for the week. And then the next week, we pack a little different
Yep.
so that they're not getting the same food all the time,
Yep.
that they have some options.
Yeah. So then how has that transitioned? I mean, you guys just got it through Thanksgiving, and now we're getting into Christmas. How has that kind of shaped out?
Oh, it's been fun. It has been. From October to January, it's a marathon for all of us at the food bank. Because you have to buy up, you have to start buying food in September, and then it gets delivered, and then what do you do with all of this food to store it until Thanksgiving?
Mm-hmm.
So we bought up turkeys, and thankfully Bellingham Cold Storage allowed us to store it in their cold storage.
Oh, very cool.
And they also have allowed us about 10,000 square feet to do our backpack program
Oh, okay.
in the dry area, in the regular storage area of that building. They're very, very sweet people. They just love giving, especially to the local food bank. So for Thanksgiving, we served for 3 days.
Mhm.
We served a Wednesday, a Saturday, and then the Wednesday before Thanksgiving. And we served 537 families.
Wow. That's great.
So in our normal day, like a normal Wednesday, is about 120 to 130 families. So we were doing 230
Wow.
to 250 families.
Yeah.
But it went very smooth.
Good.
It went very smooth. People were very kind and, did their social distance. They all wore their masks.
Mm-hmm.
And they got a lot of food. A lot
Good.
of food. So this
Nice.
last Wednesday we thought was going to be very busy. but it was just a normal day.
Okay. Nice.
Yeah.
Very cool. So then, how has the food bank been doing with? I mean, in this holiday season, I know a lot of nonprofits, stuff like that. They're struggling right now because people don't have money for donations or things like that. How is the food bank doing as we get into the Christmas season?
We are doing very well.
Good.
This is a very giving community, and people have given a lot of their donations to the food bank in good in-kind donations from the grocery store or financially. We have done very, very well, and we've gotten several grants.
Good.
Have come through, so we're looking pretty good.
Good. Yeah. And then I also wanted to ask you about the Christmas house.
Yes.
And how that all works. We weren't able to do the tree celebration like we were hoping this year, but we still have a few donations towards that. And then, but I wanted to have you talk about that one.
Okay, so Christmas House runs from November 1st until Christmas. I think Marty is down there on Christmas Eve packing things for families if they, didn't get to it in time. We were fortunate this year. The Everett Christmas house did not open, which is unfortunate.
Oh, no. Okay.
But they took all of their donations and they dispersed it to other Christmas houses and other food banks.
Okay.
So we were able to get 4 or 5 pallets of toys.
Okay.
For 0 to 12 years old.
Nice.
So that was great. So then we could focus on getting teenage. We mostly give out gift cards for the teenagers.
Yeah.
To local businesses so they can go and get themselves what they like.
Yeah.
So it has turned out very well. Yesterday, Marty told me she had signed up over 1,100 families so far for Christmas House.
Wow.
And they're not open like they usually open the Caring Place as Christmas House, and then families get to go in and pick out their own gifts.
Okay.
Well, because of COVID,
Yeah.
can't do that this year. So we had them fill out a form, and then Marty and her volunteers shopped.
Okay.
And then packed up everything, gave them a call, and they came by and picked it up with a, minimal contact.
Okay.
So 1,100 families so far have already gotten their Christmas presents.
Yeah. And I'm sure there's a lot more this year. I mean, one of the things that I've seen with how COVID has affected everything is that it's really hit anyone in like the lower to middle class level much harder than the upper, middle class and up, because there's the jobs that they need to work are the ones that are on the front lines. And so if you're any sort of health compromise, that's harder for you to do those. And there's just so many different levels of that. Childcare is harder to come by, the schooling from home even is really difficult for a lot of them.
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. I know in my own family, my 2 daughters have businesses, home businesses. So they are homeschooling their kids plus running businesses out of their homes.
Right.
And it's difficult.
Yeah. Yeah. And so with all of that, then what's the best way for the community, for people to get involved and to help out and stuff?
Well, if you like volunteering, we could always use more volunteers. A lot of our volunteers have, during this last surge of COVID, have decided to stay home.
Okay.
So we're low on volunteers.
Okay.
And we can always use volunteers. Very easy. Go to our website. Go to volunteer application. Fill out the application. We run a quick background check. And give you a call or send you an email within a day and get you signed up to come in and help.
Okay.
And most people absolutely love it. And also the thrift store is always needing volunteers also.
Okay.
The thrift store is our biggest donor.
Okay.
And we've stayed open all but 3 months of COVID.
Yep.
So I think we're the only thrift store really in the area that's open.
Okay.
And
Yeah, they keep opening, closing, opening,
closing. Yeah. So we've stayed open. We're doing all the precautions,
Mm-hmm.
and it was a big blessing. Snohomish County was able to get a grant for $2 million to help staff nonprofits.
Okay.
And so they sent me an email and said that we could get some staff,
Mhm.
full-time staff, 40 hours a week,
Yeah.
and not have to pay for them. They would be all paid for through the grant. So we were able to get 7 full-time staff members
Wow.
that we don't have to pay for, but they're working 40 hours a week.
Nice.
And it was such a blessing to open that email. And at first I thought, what? This can't be true.
Yeah.
It was.
Yeah. That's very cool. I feel like a lot of the chamber has been a big helping get money, grants, and things like that out. And it is a weird year because there's just been things that would be scam emails or something like that, like in the past. Like you're like, wait, is this really like what they're saying? And so it's really neat to be able to see that it's been able to help out a lot of.
Oh yeah, it's been very helpful, especially for the thrift store because a lot of their volunteers were older folks, retired, over 65, and so they didn't feel comfortable coming in and mixing in with all of the customers.
Yep.
So we were trying to run it on a slim staff.
Right.
And these folks came and they're just like ready to work and they're getting paid through a grant.
Yeah.
It was a blessing for them and for us.
Right. No, that's great. I mean, it's great when it can help both sides, and very cool. All right. Well, I like to end every podcast with some rapid fire questions. The first one is, what purchase of $100 or less have you enjoyed the most over the last 3 months?
$100 or less. Oh my gosh. Oh, I know. A book. I bought a book called American Dirt. It
Okay.
was terrific.
Very cool. What's it about then?
It is about a lady out of Acapulco,
Mm-hmm.
and she runs a bookstore in Acapulco, and her husband is a journalist.
Okay.
And the cartel kills him, and it tells of her journey to the United States
Okay.
with her little boy.
Oh, very cool.
It's a very controversial book right now.
Okay.
But it's well written. I would tell everybody to go out and buy it just to learn a migrant's journey
Mm-hmm.
and what they go through.
Right. Very cool. If you have a guest coming to the island, what would their first day look like here?
Oh. Well, first, if they came to our house, hopefully there'd be whales there.
Yeah.
And they could see the whales. That's always the coolest thing, I think, about living in this area.
Yeah.
And they breach right outside our bank.
Okay.
So we get to see them often. I'd also bring them to this little area, the Terry's Corner,
Yeah.
and we would shop and go to Tapped and have some wine and enjoy ourselves.
Nice.
Such a pretty area.
Yeah. Yeah. It's really a neat island to be on and explore, and there's a lot of neat things here.
There are.
So.
Just even driving around the island.
Mhm.
Every once in a while, my husband and I'll just take a drive. Let's drive around the island. And it's such a big place. I mean, we always find little neighborhoods that we've never been in before.
Yeah. No, it's really neat. Who is an interesting or fascinating person in this community that I should interview next?
Gosh, you've probably interviewed everybody I know.
Well, you can always get back to me if you find some people that you think of.
Yeah,
So
I
I'm always
will.
looking for more guests to bring on and stuff like that. So, yeah. Okay, and lastly, if you could have a message on a billboard right as you're driving on Camano Island, what would that say?
Oh, This is the good life.
Very cool. All right. Well, thank you so much for joining me on the podcast today.
Thank you, Brandon. I really appreciate you having me.
Yeah. And Islanders, I will talk to you on the next one. Well, a big thank you to Kathy Moe for joining me on the podcast today, and thank you for listening. If you haven't already, be sure to rate, review, and subscribe to our podcast on your favorite podcast platform. It really helps us be found by other Islanders like yourself. And for more information on this episode, you can go to CamanoCommons.com/EP75. That's CamanoCommons.com/EP75. Also, if you do want to volunteer at the food bank or help financially, I have left links for both of those things in the show notes, so be sure to check those out if you are interested in doing that during this season. And thank you guys for listening, and I will see you on the next one.